cloud. We are about 20 minutes late now. I'll try to make up time, talk fast. No, not really. You all should have gotten a prompt asking you about recording. Did you, in fact? Okay, good. I can't force you to consent, but if you don't consent, then you get dropped from the class for today, and you'll have to watch it catching up on your own. All right, well, this wasn't exactly how I wanted to start the class or the semester or the year, to be honest, but this will work for now, I think. So greetings to all of you. I'm sorry about all of this fuss. I'll get it straightened out, and if it was my fault, I profusely apologize. I'm hoping that it was Zoom's fault, but I suspect, I fear that it might have been my fault, and at which point I apologize for all of the fuss. I am coming to you from my family room at my home. I'm sitting on my couch here. You can see, and I'll give you there's a reason why I'm showing you this in a moment. You'll understand in a moment, but here's my family room. You get to see what it looks like. And you get to see me on my couch. And that's so you have a taste of what my life is like. I'm a COVID couch potato. I've been here sitting on this couch for the last 10 months, roughly, trying to have as normal an academic life as possible under the circumstances. And I know that you all have been struggling and suffering with similar kinds of issues, maybe even more outrageously difficult than mine. I just find it an annoyance, not a great difficulty. And I hope that everyone is weathering this COVID storm successfully. Obviously, you're going to have to cut me some slack. You can see that I'm not the most Zoom cognizant, as it were, but I think we can, starting on Wednesday, we can make the most of things. I usually like to start the class by really just plunging into right into the thick of things. And day one is not, for me, is not just a mechanical kind of perfunctory exercise. I'd like to start out with some real content, and that's what I'm going to do. We will eventually get, if we can make up for the lost time, we'll eventually get to a point where we can do some of the typical first day activities, like talking about the syllabus and such, and kind of laying out what the course will be like for the semester. But I usually start by talking about where we are meeting, and that's why I showed you my room, but my family room. But usually it's a little more interesting than that. I'm going to start sharing my screen, and we will go from there. I really had this all very well prepared, and I'm hoping that we can make up for lost time, as it were. So I'm going to start with these. Okay, we're going to pretend that we're on campus. And I'm going to ask you to, if any of you recognize what this building is. In general, you can just shout out an answer, or if you want to raise a hand and wave, that would be good. I can't see all of you at the same time in this shared screen mode. So if you might have to assert yourself by vocally to make sure that I know you, or know that you are wanting to answer. So does anyone recognize this building? It's on campus. This picture was taken relatively recently. No?
I know it's on the, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I know it's on the south side of the oval. I don't remember what it's called.
Okay, fair enough. I will show you here we go. There it is. Let me expand that a bit. Mendenhall Laboratory. This is the building. And this picture was taken within the last few years. I don't know exactly when, but it's a relatively recent one. And we can contrast that with this photo of the same building many, many years ago. What's different about it? Anyone? No? Don't be shy. It's just, this is not a trick question. Is it the same as the picture that I showed you just a moment ago? No, clearly not. Okay, that's enough. That's enough of an answer. If not, at the very least, something is missing over here to the side of the building, and the front is very different. There's a little wall here, and there's vegetation and so forth. There's a sign that there wasn't there before. So I usually start the class with there are times when I've actually taught this class in Mendenhall Laboratory itself, and that's been great for a reason that you'll see in a moment. But there's the contrast between the two photos, this one and the other one. This is the sign, and the other photo. The contrast between these two tells us that there's an important fact about life, really, in a sense, and that is that there's a history to everything. There, in linguistic terms that we'll be using in this class a lot, there is a diachrony to everything, to all institutions, to all buildings, to all things in general. Diachrony is a term that comes from Greek, from the Greek prefix dia, meaning through, and the chrono, which refers to time. You might know it from words like chronology or chronometer. And it means literally the passage through time. And so when we can compare this modern picture of Mendenhall Lab with this picture from 70 or so years ago, we can see that there is a diachrony to the building itself. And more generally, we'll see there's a diachrony to all kinds of human institutions, including language, and that's the point of this class. But diachrony is usually contrasted with synchrony. Synchrony from the Greek syn, meaning along with, and the same chrono morpheme referring to time. And it refers to not the passage through time, but a point along with a particular point, a particular time. This synchrony is not quite as compositional in its meaning as diachrony is, but synchrony refers to an institution, an event, a state of affairs or whatever at some particular point in time, whereas diachrony pertains to the expanse of across time, through time. And we can see this somewhat clearly as a kind of metaphor, if you will, by thinking about a tree being sort of the whole trunk of the tree. And here I have one of these elegant sequoia trees from California, which are the tallest trees around. This is just a small part of a tree that was 100 or more feet high. And we can contrast that the diachrony would be basically the whole of the tree trunk, and the synchrony would be a cross section, a slice at some particular point. Say we take a slice, if we take a slice right here, for instance, across the tree trunk, we would get something that looks like this. Now the metaphor is a bit strained. It doesn't quite work. Can anyone think of what it is about a cross section of a tree that means that it's not exactly just showing us a particular point in time? How many of you have taken a botany class?
Trees grow outwards, so the rings
Yeah, right.
older.
So you know that you can count the rings on a tree, and you can't see them very clearly here, but this is from a display item at Sequoia National Park in California, and these labels refer to different points in time that are represented by the rings on the trees. They're hard to read, but one of them refers to the time of the Magna Carta in the 13th century in England, when it was promulgated. So the metaphor isn't quite perfect in that with a tree, when we get a cross section, we also get a glimpse of diachrony, but we will, because of the rings, who was it, Jacob, who said that? It was the tree that grows outward.
That was me, Oscar.
Oscar, thank you. Okay, sorry about that. So the tree grows outward, but that means that this synchronic slice, as it were, also gives us a glimpse of diachrony, and we will see that that's true even with regard to language. So when we talk about synchrony versus diachrony with regard to language, we'll see that even in any synchronic state that we look at, there are going to be hints and glimpses of the past, as well as, we might say, some sort of looking forward towards the future. I'll have you read an article of mine later in the semester that addresses exactly this sort of past, present, and future glimpses that we get of time. But okay, so that's one point that I wanted to make with this by talking about Mendenhall labs from some years ago and Mendenhall labs from recently, that there's a diachrony to even something as mundane as a building. We can talk about the synchrony of Mendenhall labs the way it looks today. We can compare it with the earlier state and develop a diachrony of the building. Could we talk about the synchrony of Mendenhall labs 70 years ago? What do you think? Is this a, even though I used it to illustrate the diachrony of the building, is this a synchronic representation of Mendenhall? Anyone? Yeah, Oscar, you seem to be nodding. So is that nodding a yes or nodding off to sleep?
Yeah, I would think it's synchrony because it's just a snapshot of the building at a moment in time.
Exactly, right. So synchrony does not mean present day 2021, January 11th. Synchrony can be any particular point in time. And what that really means then is that diachrony is a series of synchronic stages that we can observe and look at. So the passage through time is really the passage through synchronic states. And that's why this distinction between synchrony and diachrony is really very crucial for us to understand and get a good sense of. Okay, so that's one point that Mendenhall likes to, that I like to use the Mendenhall photos for. And as I say, sometimes I've actually taught right in Mendenhall. But there's another reason as well. Does anyone know what is housed in Mendenhall? Which department is housed in Mendenhall?
Doesn't the basement have like evolutionary ecology or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. I'll show you the interior of the lab. It's the Department of Earth Sciences, or what at some point in the history of the university was referred to as geology. And there's another it's actually a pretty cool building, I must say. And you can see fossils. I think that's what you're referring to, right? You can see fossils on display, and in the flooring of the building, they have slabs of different rocks from around the world and around Ohio. So it's an interesting building just in and of itself. But why should geology and earth sciences be of interest to us in linguistics, you might ask? Well, there's a reason, and there's actually a connection. And that is, let me find my notes here. And that's because of this man named Charles Lyell. He was a professor of geology at King's College, London, in the first half of the 19th century, and he's well known for having proposed a notion of that's referred to in the literature as uniformitarianism. And what he was trying to do, he was trying to make sense of geological formations that he saw out in the field, in the world around him. He was a professor of geology, so he was taking note of these things. He was saying, so how did these come to be? How did they come into existence? So he was interested in the historical question. And what he was able to do, or what he reasoned ultimately, was that he could observe certain things going on in the geology of the world today, in the present day, which for him was the 1820s. And he made the link, if you will, to geology in an earlier time, saying, suppose the processes that create rocks and cliffs and erosion and volcano eruptions and so forth, suppose those processes are uniform throughout all of time, then we can explain the past. We can explain the way things developed in the past by reference to what we know about the present. So there is a uniformitarianism to the natural world, is how he put it. And the linguists have taken on this idea, especially popularized by William Labov, one of my heroes in linguistics, who we will have occasion to talk about on and off throughout the semester, and you'll have a chance to read one of his articles later on. Labov has taken Lyell's notion of geological uniformitarianism and turned it into, or applied it to linguistics as a linguistic uniformitarianism, saying that we can understand the what has happened in the past in language by what we see as the processes of language change and development that are observable in the present day. So we can use the present to explain the past as far as linguistics is concerned. And Labov has done this especially with regard to the role of variation, synchronic variation, as it relates to language change. So the synchronic variation that is observed today can, under certain circumstances, lead to change. This is one of the ways in which I was hinting at earlier about the present feeding into the future of language, at least. But also, it's the processes that we see going on today, we can impute as being relevant in the past and use them to explain developments that happened in the past. So just as Lyell talked about a geological uniformitarianism, Labov has suggested that we can talk about a linguistic uniformitarianism and use the present, the observable present, to explain the past. In that article of mine that I alluded to, that I'll have you read later on, we will have occasion to talk about another type of uniformitarianism that's relevant for our purposes as well. But I will hold you or leave you in suspense as far as that's concerned. So there's 2 points then about Mendenhall. One is the synchrony and diachrony that we just the notions of synchrony and diachrony that we learned from it, and then the second is the link between geology and geological uniformitarianism and linguistic uniformitarianism. But there's a third as well, a third reason, which I owe to a student, Marilyn Zangardi, in my Linguistics 285 class almost 40 years ago now. And I don't know if it violates FERPA rules for me to mention that she was in the class, but I don't really care. I think she deserves credit for having done something linguistically that was very, very interesting and very relevant. So she was talking to me after class early on in the semester, wanting to make an appointment or something. She said, I have some questions for you. I'd like to talk with you more, but I can't stay right now because, she said, I have a class in Menden. And I thought, okay, what's going on here? Does anyone see what Marilyn Zangardi was doing? Can anyone make sense of her saying she has a class in Menden?
She analyzed it as Mendenhall
Exactly.
rather than as Mendenhall.
Exactly. That's what I understood her to be doing. So the name of the building is Mendenhall, where that actually is the name. That's the hall is just the end part of a famous geologist's name, Mendenhall. And she interpreted it. She reanalyzed it as if it were Menden Hall. And then how did she get to Menden? Well, if you think about what we do with building names on campus, and not just on campus, but in general, so we have Oxley Hall and Haggerty Hall and University Hall and so forth. And you say, oh, I have a class, or my office is in, I could say it's in Oxley Hall, but I could also just as easily apply a process that linguists refer to as clipping and, eliminate the hall. It's sort of redundant because we all know we're talking about buildings, and we end up with just Menden. So we could talk about, I have my office in Oxley. I actually have another office in Haggerty because I'm in 2 different departments. There's a kind of, not just a reanalysis that allows for this clipping, but there's also a process that we can describe as analogy or analogical in nature involved here, which will play an important role round about the middle of the semester. In the same way that we have Oxley Hall, that's the analogy between Oxley Hall, Haggerty Hall, and so forth, is the basis for the reanalysis of Mendenhall. And the clipping that you can do with Oxley Hall to Oxley or Haggerty Hall to Haggerty allows for Mendenhall reanalyzed in this way to come out as Menden. So Marilyn Zangardi, I owe her a tremendous debt for having given me this fantastically relevant example, very localized, very, very relevant for OSU. And I've never had a chance to thank her in person for it, but through passing it along to all of you, I am recognizing her linguistic coup here, I guess. All right. As long as I'm talking about diachrony and human institutions, have any of you heard of this Linguistics 285 class? You should be shaking your heads no, because it doesn't exist anymore. But it did exist, and it was the precursor to the Linguistics 3901 class that I think some of you have taken. Am I right? A few of you indicated at some point to me that you had taken 3901. So when I came here to OSU 41 years ago, there was this Linguistics 285 class called Language Change and Development. And that's what I taught the first few times that I taught it. But at some point we decided to upgrade it to a slightly, I think it was a matter of requiring a prerequisite for it. The the equivalent of the Linguistics 2000 class. So we upgraded the numbering because it wasn't a basic level class, it had a prerequisite. We upgraded the numbering to 385. That was a change that was really dictated by the, by what we might call the universal grammar of OSU's numbering system. But then we changed it ultimately from 385, we decided to change it to 311. And that's because the precursor to this course that you're taking now used to be 611 for some reason. 6 corresponding to an upper level course, upper level undergraduate or graduate level class. But the 11, I'm not sure why that sort of predated me. But what kind of development is there in going from 285 and 611 to changing this one to 311? Does anyone, in terms of notions that we have just talked about, can anyone see what was going on there?
By analogy?
Yeah, exactly. It's a kind of analogy. So we're taking a situation where you have 385 and 611 and oops, this should be 6, sorry. And sort of regularizing it, saying, oh, well, we have one class that has an 11 and refers to historical linguistics, so maybe they should both match in that way, in the same way that Oxley Hall or Menden Hall matches Oxley Hall. So it's a kind of analogy. So we have not only the universal grammar of OSU's numbering system, but also analogy at work here as well. And I'm showing you these things to let you to try to give you a sense that a lot of the notions that we'll be talking about throughout this semester really are sort of around us all the time in other kinds of domains, but when we apply them to language, we get particular kinds of results. The change to 301 was dictated by sort of by the universal grammar of OSU system, not the numbering system per se, but due to cross-listing with a NELC course. They wanted to teach a course that was basically the same class as this one. We said, well, okay, you can teach it, but why don't we have it cross-listed by OSU's system at that point, at that time, and I think it might even still be in place. The numbers had to match between the two departments, and they already had a 311. So we both had to change to something else. We both changed to 301. The change to 3901, and can anyone, does anyone have an idea of what was going on with that? None of you were here when we had when we taught under the quarter system, but about 7 years ago, we changed from a quarter system to a semester system, and all of the courses were renumbered to having 4 digits instead of 3 digits, I think to avoid confusion. The 3,000 level classes roughly corresponded to the 300 level classes under the quarter system. The 9, that was just there was a department internal designation for historical classes, because we now have, and what's at work here, 3901 and 5901. It's a kind of analogy, right? Matching between the two. Okay, so I'm not going to belabor this, but I think you get the idea. In general, I should let you know that if you have any questions or comments as I go along, please just feel free to interject. It is a bit hard for me to see everyone when I'm displaying or sharing my screen and displaying materials to you. So if you do have a question, I would ask that you make yourself known somehow to me. Either the best way is to unmute yourself and to speak up, but because I can't see all 15 of you at the same time, and I do sort of toggle back and forth between the different displays at the bottom, but I won't necessarily catch all of you. So if you do have a question or a comment, or if something isn't clear, you want me to repeat it or whatever, or if you want me to shut up if I'm going on too long about something, raise your hand and say, hey, I've got a question. Okay, so let me go for a moment to, or go back for a moment to this idea of when we were talking about diachrony, I said basically everything has a diachrony. All human institutions have a diachrony, and language is one of those human institutions that has a diachrony. And that's really what this course is about, trying to understand the diachrony of human language. And individual words have a diachrony as well, have a history, have an etymology. Well, so that's the term that we will come back to by and by. And to take something very topical, we have this word COVID, which itself has a relatively recent entry into our lexicon. It's a very prominent, salient word now, unfortunately. It was created as an acronym, or a kind of acronym, taking the first syllables of it was a phrase, coronavirus disease, and taking the first syllables and the final and the initial letter of disease and coming up with COVID. But I don't know, have you heard vid as a variant of COVID? And what does that show us? That in something that we've just talked about, or corona for that matter. Have you heard Rona for corona? I think we all have. And what does that show? What process of change that you witnessed about 10 minutes ago does that show? Anyone?
Clipping.
Clipping, yeah, exactly. It's a kind of clipping in the same way that that Menden Hall to Menden is a clipping. This is a clipping. It's a different type of clipping. The initial part is clipped off instead of the end part, but there are parallels for that. I don't know if this is still current slang, but when I was growing up, rents for parents was a sort of slang amongst me and my peer group. Is that still current? Anyone still use that? No. Okay. Well, language changes, as we know, as we've been finding out. So and slang is one of the areas where it changes. But that's a kind of I think people sometimes talk about fore clipping and back clipping. It can get kind of overly taxonomic, but the idea is the same, that you. Okay, so we also there are also some of these words that have deeper history, and I will show you the history of virus. So borrowing from Latin, it tells us. So this comes from the Oxford English Dictionary. Oops. I'll get it. Dictionary known as affectionately as the OED. We'll have occasion to look at the OED many times throughout the semester. It tells us it's from classical, virus is a borrowing, classical Latin virus, poisonous secretion, venom, and so forth. It's the same Indo-European base as Sanskrit visha, meaning poison, Greek ios, meaning poison. And this gives us tells us a couple of things. It gives us the etymology within of this word itself within English, that it came into English from Latin. But by making comparisons with Sanskrit, Avestan, and Greek, it's really inviting us to sort of set up this kind of network of or display, let's say, of relationship, and it's essentially inviting us to develop what we can call correspondence among words across languages. And this is going to turn out to be a very powerful sort of methodology that we'll use, which will be referred to as the comparative method. And it will turn out when we apply this more carefully that these correspondences are regular in that they're not just one-off kinds of correspondences, but they recur across many sets of words, and we'll ultimately have a very precise and technical definition of what it means to talk about regular correspondences. But one thing it tells us is that words can be compared across languages and actually be quite different. So the only thing that the Greek doesn't have an initial consonant, it doesn't have a medial consonant, but the I and the S are the only things that match between Greek and Latin, and the I is the only thing that matches between Greek and Sanskrit, for instance. And that's going to turn out to be an important fact about the application of this comparative method. I was going to send you to breakout rooms, but to save time, I won't do that now. But we will. I will. We'll take advantage of the breakout room possibility next time, and I think I'm going to just try to save a little time to make up for the lost time at the beginning. Let's transition a little bit to another important fact about the past year. COVID and the pandemic they were a big event of 2020 that have shaped our lives. But the same can be said for the movement for social equality and social justice that was sparked by the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis at the end of May, and subsequent kinds of developments. And this sort of heightened sensitivity to inequalities, social inequalities, has led some people to sort of reevaluate the terminology, some of the terminology that we use. Like, realtors, real estate agents, apparently are somewhat hesitant now to talk about the main bedroom in a house as the master bedroom because of the images or the connotations that terminology summons up of the master and slave relationship, which is sort of more highly salient in these days of I think good heightened sensitivity to racial injustices. And so also with this is a kind of blinds or shade shutters that are apparently are among the most popular in the US, and they're referred to as plantation shutters and blinds. I'm not quite sure exactly why, but that's the term that's used. And this is a term that has been sort of dissed in a way, or given a somewhat taboo type value because of the way the images that it summons up of plantation life and the injustices that slaves on plantations suffered. So these are words that are sort of going out of vogue, let's say, and are can be, in a sense, some other term. So instead of master bedroom, something like the main bedroom or the largest bedroom would do, for instance. There is another very overt use of master and slave with regard to the brake cylinders. If you have hydraulic brakes in your car, the master cylinder is the control device, and it controls various slave cylinders as a way of, so it sort of distributes the hydraulic pressure to the other parts of the brake system. And we can wonder whether, I mean, so that is, it isn't even talking about animate entities, humans, but I don't know whether that's, we can sort of keep our eyes open to see if this term master and slave cylinder applied to something that controls and something that is controlled, it will go out of vogue as well. There's a phenomenon, and I'm going to give, hang on just a sec, let me find where I'm at again. Yeah, so there's a, in the textbook that is not required but recommended, that Hans Henrik Hock and I wrote. This is what it looks like. It's not required, but it's suggested. We write about what we call, let me get there, linguistic taboo. Taboo is a basis for vocabulary renewal. We refer to terms for different terms for bathrooms, so anything that is distasteful in any way. The Victorian era is said to have created terms like, instead of talking about the chicken breast, the breast of the chicken, the descriptive term white meat, drumstick instead of leg, so references to body parts being somewhat tabooed, or the sort of thing you wouldn't say in polite company. So you come up with a euphemism. But we also draw attention to the fact that sometimes the taboo extends to what we call innocent bystanders, words that happen to be mere homonyms or that sound similar. So the F word in English, was the basis ultimately for the tabooing during the, or the banning, not in any sort of overt way, but just through conventional usage of other words that had the form F with a short vowel and a K, but perfectly ordinary meanings. So this one here, and I won't say it because I don't want people to think that I'm being offensive, meant a sail. This word feck still survives in this word feckless, and it was a clipping really of effect, but it was close in sound to the F word, and was not the sort of thing ultimately that one would say in polite company. The last dates for some of these words, they come from the Victorian era, where there was this euphemistic replacement of taboo-induced replacement of like breast, white meat replacing breast, for instance. What this this kind of example shows us is that language, and we see this in the current situation with master bedroom and plantation shutters and such, being somewhat tabooed or avoided. We see that language is sensitive to the social circumstances in which it occurs. So language is embedded in the larger societal context, and that societal context can have a very real effect on our language. I mentioned Labov earlier, William Labov earlier, and he is very much a, where did I have him? He's very much associated with, let me get that here. Here he is, Labov. He's very much associated with the field of study within linguistics called sociolinguistics. And sociolinguistics really has to do with the study of language as it is embedded in a social context. And we see this in language change. Labov has, we see this, very overtly in these cases of tabooing of words, but Labov sort of has elevated it to a real art form as well as a scientific investigation. But the notion of language being a reflection of society or affected by society is not what wasn't new to Labov, but he helped develop the subfield that we now call sociolinguistics. So I'm going to shift gears for a moment because we're getting close to the end of the class, and I'm going to do a bit of a striptease for you. Not really. It'll only go so far, I promise. Because I have here on my person a t-shirt. I don't know how many of you can see that. I'm going to give you put up a picture of the t-shirt in a moment. Hang on just a sec. There it is. So you can all see this. Does anyone know what this t-shirt is depicting? It moves us into a slightly different direction on the study of language history. Does anyone recognize what language this is? Oh, I can blow it up a little bit.
Is it Basque?
It is. It is. Yes, it is. It is Basque, and Basque is well. Why is this T-shirt relevant for a class on historical linguistics? Oscar, can you take that?
Basque is a language isolate, so
Yeah, good. Yes. So Basque is sort of famous within linguistics, historical linguistics, for being what we refer to as a language isolate, meaning that it has no known relatives, no known relationships at all. The book that I showed you that Hans Hock and I wrote, notice that we talk about language change, language history, which we've been emphasizing so far, but it also in the title talks about language relationship. So that's one of the other aspect to the study of language history is the relationships that languages show amongst one another. What we were talking about here with the comparison of Latin virus and Greek eos and Sanskrit vishaha is really a matter of talking about languages that are that show a relationship to one another and as expressed through these comparable words. And one of the things we'll be doing in this class is developing a precise notion and a precise methodology for looking at relationships among languages. It also allows us to distinguish here between can anyone guess what maitasuna means in Basque? No? It's not a word that you would have recognized unless you happen to know Basque, but does this give any indication of what it means? A heart, two people kissing. This was before the days of social distancing. Well, it means love. This is the verb to love in Basque. And this is what we can refer to as an inherited word because it's part of Basque. It seems not to have any outside influences at all. Remember what the OED tells us about the etymology of virus, that it's a borrowing from Latin. So we can distinguish between words that are inherited versus words that are borrowings. And we can actually find some fairly obvious borrowings here. So what do you imagine folkloria means in Basque? Anyone want to try their hand at translating Basque? Or
Folklore.
folklore, yeah, good. And most likely it is a borrowing from a modern European language into Basque. Not necessarily English. It could come from another source, but it ultimately would be connected to English folklore. Okay, so and so this T-shirt then is emblematic of another dimension to the study of historical linguistics. It's not just language change, it's not just language history, but also language relationships. And we're almost out of time, so let me draw your attention to 2 assignments that I have for you. We didn't quite do everything I wanted to, but we would have if it hadn't been for the 20 minutes or so that we lost to the what do you call it, my problem with, or the problems with the entry. So there are 2 things I'd like you to do for Wednesday. The things that we didn't get to, we'll either do them on Wednesday or they aren't crucial. I think we covered the key elements. But for Wednesday, I would like you to do this assignment number 1 involving reading reading this article by a columnist, a journalist named Kathleen Parker, and reacting to it. You don't have to do anything too extensive, but please do it, because I want to discuss it in class. And then another assignment is that is due by a week from Wednesday is to read the syllabus. We'll go over on Wednesday. We'll go over some aspects of the syllabus, but I would like you to read it carefully and to answer this question. And if the question seems kind of off the wall to you, that's what it should at this point. But by the time you read the syllabus, it should be crystal clear what's going on there. So for Wednesday, I will work on the passcode problem and get that settled, and I will let you know by email what the deal is, and then we will talk about your first homework assignment that's due on the one about reading the Kathleen Parker article. But if anyone has any questions, I'm going to stop sharing for the moment so I can see you all better. And I see there are a few things in chat. I wonder if I missed some dance. I don't quite understand that, but Mendenhall. Okay, good. So if anyone has any questions in the last 2 minutes or so, now would be a good time to ask. But seeing no evidence of questions, no puzzled looks on anyone's face, I will declare the class to be adjourned. So good luck with your other classes. I have another one. I even see some of you in it later on today, and I hope the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that there isn't a problem with logging into that class, because I don't want to go through the same fuss that we did at the beginning of this class. But thank you all very much for coming, and have a look. The syllabus is in the Carmen on the Carmen site for the course. The homework assignments are in the Carmen site. At least the first few. I will populate the assignments pages as we move along. But I think that's it. And if there are no questions, then I will stop the recording and wish you all well for the day. Okay. So long.